Hello, I'm Theodore Whitelow with Breaking Through News. Right now, I'm outside of the Harrisonburg Police Dept in downtown Harrisonburg, Virginia. For those of you that are long-standing viewers of Breaking Through, you know that I've been a staunch supporter of the Harrisonburg Police Dept. Whenever possible, I've made myself available to attend any of their community outreach events, whether it was Shop with a Cop, National Night Out, the hiring of the new police chief, or a canvassing of neighborhoods by police officers. However, I've always made it clear that if the Harrisonburg Police Dept or any of its officers were ever accused of excessive use of force, police brutality, racial profiling, or violating the rights of citizens, residents, or visitors to Harrisonburg, that I would investigate it thoroughly and report on it accordingly. Which takes us to the early morning hours of December 16th, 2018 at the North 38 apartment complex in Harrisonburg, Virginia. I want to make this crystal clear. This is not an anti-police report. I believe that you can show support for your local law enforcement, but also hold them accountable if they've been accused of doing something egregious. In the early morning hours of December 16th, Harrisonburg police responded to a noise violation at an apartment in the North 38 apartment complex in Harrisonburg, Virginia. Upon arrival, officers encountered Melissa Duncan and her wife, both African-American females who lived in the apartment unit in question. The women agreed to turn down their music but refused to make their guests leave. The women argued with police officers and asked them to leave several times, but police officers refused to leave from in front of their home. After about 18 minutes of back and forth arguing between the police and the women, Harrisonburg Police Dept body cam footage shows Melissa Duncan standing in her doorway with her door open. Then one of the police officers attempts to apprehend Duncan. Duncan turns toward the apartment and runs inside. Harrisonburg police officers rush in behind her, and what happens next is horrifying. Police officers repeatedly tase Duncan and order everyone to leave the party. We must warn you, the video you are about to see is graphic and horrifying.
Talk to you away from people.
I'm fine right here. I'm comfortable right here.
No,
Don't put your hands up. No.
Everybody stop. Everybody stop. Everybody stop. No, everybody out now. Everybody out. Everybody out. Everybody out. Everybody out.
Record that shit. Record that.
Everybody out now. Everybody out.
After the police were finished tasing and roughing up Melissa Duncan and her wife, the two women and another partygoer were arrested. Duncan was charged with assaulting a police officer, but there is absolutely no evidence that proves that she assaulted a police officer. And in court last week, prosecutors admitted that you can't really see the officer being assaulted on the video. Mike Donovan is the president and CEO of Nexus Services. Donovan is a civil rights activist in his own right. His company has spent millions of dollars in legal fees and on programs to protect the civil rights of Americans and undocumented immigrants. Mike Donovan is behind Melissa Duncan in this case, and his company has posted her bond and will be paying for her defense counsel and for any future litigation against the HPD and or officers involved in the tasing of Melissa.
But what we do know is that the police didn't like being told they had to leave. The police didn't like being called racist. Well, you know what? They did have to leave because it's not their home. And you know what? They are racist because they tased an unarmed African-American female. And I'm sorry, but those women telling the police they have to leave their home is not illegal. That is not an assault. And I don't care if you think it's disrespectful or not. It's no reason to tase somebody. We live in a society that has lost our sense of conscience. If we really think that police officers should be able to tase a person because they thought they were rude. And that's really what's happened here. And so we have to stand against this, because this is, if we allow this to happen and it is allowed, the officers that did this get away with it, then we'll never go back from this. This is the new norm in Harrisonburg. And this is a department with already plenty of problems with race. It's only going to get worse. We have to stop it by holding the officers that did this horrible thing accountable.
On Saturday, Mike Donovan released a public statement that was not only critical of the police officers and their actions, but the statement was also critical of the local chapter of the NAACP. Because originally, the NAACP was also backing Melissa, but after seeing the 30-minute body cam footage released by the Harrisonburg Police Dept, The Harrisonburg Rockingham Chapter of the NAACP released a statement stating that the officers didn't do anything wrong when they entered Melissa and her wife's private residence and repeatedly tased Melissa.
I think they made a huge mistake, and I'm going to believe that it's a huge mistake they made because mistakes can be corrected, and they need to correct it. I think the NAACP, in an effort to try to build relationship with the police department, has abandoned their responsibility to stand up for two unarmed African American women who were attacked, one who was tased by two officers at the same time. And so what the NAACP should do is retract their statement and issue a new one calling for a community dialogue over this incident. The NAACP doesn't need to coddle racist police officers. In fact, it is antithetical to what they're supposed to be. They are supposed to help hold police accountable and encourage positive relations for African Americans in the community. That's what they need to do. And we can put behind us this horrible thing that they did, releasing a statement that coddles racist police. If they don't change that, if they don't correct that mistake, if they don't release a new statement, then their viability as a civil rights organization in the Shenandoah Valley is dead.
I reached out to the president of the Harrisonburg Rockingham NAACP, Monica Robinson, for an interview, but she told me she would not have time to interview today because she is preparing a new statement on the matter. Maybe she is feeling the heat and took Mike Donovan's advice. Maybe not. We will have to wait until the statement is released to find out. I mentioned to Mike Donovan that some people on social media are saying that Duncan deserved what happened to her because she was yelling at the police, and at several points in the video, she called them racial slurs. Here is Donovan's priceless and powerful response.
It's a little thing called white privilege. You see, the white supremacists who gathered in Charlottesville to conduct a race riot, which ultimately occurred in the streets of Charlottesville, see, they didn't get tased by officers. Officers got up and walked away before lifting a hand against white supremacists bringing a race riot to Charlottesville, Virginia. Isn't it interesting that white police officers treat black females who are unarmed in their own home, that they don't have a warrant to search, very differently? See, I don't think it makes any sense. I'm not going to sit here and answer questions about whether these women should have been nicer, whether they should have been more polite to the officers. It's their home. They had turned the music down, they weren't having a party anymore, and they wanted the police to leave. And you know what? The police had to leave because they didn't have a warrant, and the owners of the home were telling them to do so. When those officers didn't leave, those women got upset. Darn right they did. But how many of those gun-toting white supremacists would have been nice to an officer standing outside their door refusing to leave? None of them. How many of them would have been tased? We only have to look to Charlottesville to answer that question, or any community in Rockingham County that has those folks living in it who the police don't harass every day. So I'm tired of this false equivalency of the actions of the Harrisonburg police related to these women versus what the Harrisonburg police do not do every day and standing up against racists in the community. You know, we have officers that responded that didn't like being called out, didn't like being told that they couldn't be there, and decided to go into that home without a warrant, decided to handcuff Melissa's wife, then choke her after handcuffing her, which is police misconduct, which is violence against an individual long before they ever tased anyone. There's no evidence that either of those women assaulted those officers, and for the police or the community, for individuals who are sympathetic to police that create these types of incidents, for those people to use this as an argument is in itself abjectly racist.
This is a developing story. I will continue to follow this story and update our viewers when new developments arise in this case, inside and outside of the courtroom. In Harrisonburg, Theodore Whitelow for Breaking Through News.